What would you say if a cop kept you on the roadside and you needed to know right now whether you could legally leave? Those two words do not magically erase a lawful stop, but they do force the officer to reveal whether you are actually being held. If you never ask, you can stand there giving away time, information, and rights without even knowing it. Hit subscribe right now because what I'm about to show you could stop you from talking yourself into a much bigger problem during a simple stop. And like this video so you can find it fast when your heart is racing and your mind goes blank. Here's the reality. The title sounds simple, but the lesson is bigger than two words. You're about to learn the question that makes an officer state your status out loud, the sentence that blocks a consent search, the silence move that stops you from feeding an investigation, and the lawyer line you use if things go bad fast. Let me show you exactly how these phrases work together, because one line by itself helps, but all of them together protect you a lot more. You'll also hear the court cases behind them in plain English, not boring legal talk. And you'll see how the same stop can end in two totally different ways depending on what comes out of your mouth in the first minute. If you drive, ride with friends, or even walk at night, this matters to you. A lot of people think rights protect themselves. They don't. Rights usually protect you only when you use them calmly, clearly, and at the right time. Now let's talk about where people mess this up. Most people have no idea when a normal stop ends and a fishing trip begins. That's the danger. An officer asks a few extra questions. You think you have to stay. The officer sounds casual, you sound nervous. Then you start filling the silence. You explain where you came from, where you're going, who was with you, what's in the car, why your hands were shaking, why you looked away, why you were in that neighborhood, why you took that exit. Every extra sentence gives the officer more to work with. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos and the pattern is always the same. Drivers talk to seem polite, but the talking creates the suspicion. Your mouth can turn a warning into a search. Your panic can turn a delay into an arrest. That's why you need simple lines, not speeches. Short words, calm tone, no arguing, no attitude. No fake law school performance on the side of the road. You need repeatable phrases you can actually remember under stress. The first tactic is the question that exposes the whole situation. Here's exactly what you say. Am I being detained or am I free to leave? Word for word. Memorize that line. The two words inside that question are the ones from the title, free to leave. Those words matter because they force clarity. If the officer says you're free to leave, the stop is over and you should leave calmly. If the officer says you're being detained, now you know this is not just friendly conversation, and you stop acting like it is. Listen closely because this is critical. You do not ask this in a rude voice. You do not say it while reaching around, stepping forward, or rolling your eyes. You ask it calmly with your hands visible after the basic reason for the stop has been handled or when the questioning keeps dragging on. You are not trying to win an argument. You are making the officer choose a lane. Either you're free to go or the officer is claiming a legal reason to hold you. That is a huge difference. Bad way. Most drivers say, I'm just trying to get home, officer. Did I do something wrong? Then the stop stays fuzzy and the officer keeps fishing. Good way. Smart drivers say, am I being detained or am I free to leave? Then the officer has to answer the real question. Here's why this works in simple English. Police can stop you for a reason tied to the stop, like speeding, expired tags, or a broken light. They can also briefly hold you if they have real suspicion of another crime, but they are not supposed to keep you there forever just because they feel like chatting. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. The law cares about whether you are actually seized or free to go. Your question brings that issue to the surface fast. Now, this does not mean the officer has to say, you got me, goodbye. If they have a real legal reason, they may say you are detained, fine. That answer still helps you because now you stop guessing, you stop rambling, you stop volunteering, you stop treating a detention like a friendly talk. Bad way. Most drivers say, sure, I can stay and answer a few more questions. Then they hand the officer more time to build suspicion. Good way. Smart drivers say, am I being detained or am I free to leave? And then they find out whether the officer is asking or ordering. Watch what happens when you use this the right way. If the officer says, you're free to go, you do not linger. You do not ask for a debate. You do not stay to prove you're innocent. You politely leave. If the officer says, you're detained, that is your signal to move into the next protections I'm about to show you. Former police officers have confirmed this works because it changes the stop from vague pressure to a clear legal position. And clear legal positions are easier to challenge later than confused small talk on camera. There's also a huge emotional benefit here. When you ask that question, you take back a little control, not street control, not power, just clarity. And clarity is gold when you're stressed. You do not need to know every law in your state. You need to know whether you can leave. That question gets you there faster than almost anything else you can say. Have you ever had an officer keep talking after your warning or ticket was basically done? Tell me in the comments because that exact moment traps a lot of drivers. The second tactic is the line that blocks the easiest shortcut into your car, your bag, or your stuff. Here's exactly what you say. Officer, I do not consent to any searches. Word for word, memorize that line. If you want it even simpler, you can say, I do not consent to searches. Same message, clean, direct, no extra words. This is 100% legal. You are allowed to refuse consent. That matters because consent is the easiest way around a warrant fight leader. If you say yes, the search usually becomes much harder to challenge. If you say no, the officer may still search if they claim another legal reason, but now you have not helped them by giving permission. That is a big difference. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it creates a clean record. Either you consented or you didn't. Your clear refusal matters. Bad way. Most drivers say, I guess that's okay, I have nothing to hide. Then the search becomes your idea. Good way. Smart drivers say, Officer, I do not consent to any searches. Then the officer has to rely on actual legal grounds, not your nervous permission. A lot of drivers get tricked here because the request sounds casual. You don't mind if I take a quick look, right? That sounds small. It is not small. A quick look can become a full search. A simple yes can open the door to hours of problems. And once the search starts, you cannot undo the word yes. That's why your line must be short and automatic. No speeches, no but, no explaining why you're innocent. Innocent people get searched too. Watch what happens when you use the right words. The officer asks, mind if I search the car? You answer, Officer, I do not consent to any searches. Calm voice, no attitude. Then you stop talking. That pause matters. A lot of people ruin the line by adding extra junk after it. They say, but I swear there's nothing in there, or I'm just in a hurry, or my friend borrowed the car yesterday. Stop. The line already did its job. Your extra words only help the officer. Bad way. Most drivers say, go ahead, I've got nothing illegal. Then a forgotten item, a friend's property, or even a misunderstanding becomes a disaster. Good way. Smart drivers say, Officer, I do not consent to any searches. Then they keep their rights intact even if the officer searches anyway. This matters because consent cases are a huge part of roadside searches. The courts have said voluntary consent can make a search lawful. That is why your refusal is so important. You are not being difficult. You are refusing to waive protection. That's a big difference. And if the officer keeps pushing, you do not switch to arguing. You simply repeat the line. I do not consent to any searches. Same words, same calm tone, no drama. Here's something people forget. Refusing consent does not make you guilty. People act like only criminals say no. That is nonsense. You lock your front door, right? That does not make you suspicious. It means you understand boundaries. Your car, your phone, your bag, and your body all have boundaries too. Saying no to consent is just saying, if you want access, follow the law. That is it. No attitude, no fight, just a boundary. The third tactic is the one that protects you from becoming your own worst witness. Here's exactly what you say. I choose to remain silent, word for word. Or you can say, I am invoking my right to remain silent. Use the version you can remember. Both are strong. Both are clear. Both beat nervous talking. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. Silence is not just about not confessing. Silence is about not giving the officer little puzzle pieces to arrange against you later. Your timeline, your mood, your word choice, your joke, your guess, your correction, your contradiction. These tiny things become indicators in reports. Here's the reality. Many roadside cases get stronger because the driver talks too much, not because the police started with strong evidence. Bad way. Most drivers say I only had one drink, or that's not my bag, or my cousin borrowed the car yesterday. Then those words become evidence, even if the full story is different. Good way. Smart drivers say I choose to remain silent. Then they stop feeding the investigation. A lot of people think silence makes them look guilty. Not true. Random talking is what often makes people look shaky. Calm silence looks disciplined, and disciplined people are harder to trip up. I'm not saying be rude. I'm saying be quiet after you state your choice. That's a major difference. You can still hand over required documents if your state requires it. You can still follow lawful commands, but you do not have to narrate your life. Let me show you exactly why this matters. Officers are trained to ask normal-sounding questions that feel harmless. Where are you headed? Whose car is this? Why are you so nervous? Have you had anything to drink tonight? What's in the bag? If you answer 5 questions under stress, you will often give 6 versions of the truth. Not because you're lying, because stress wrecks your timing, memory, and word choice. Then the report says you were evasive or inconsistent. That is how regular people talk themselves into trouble. Bad way. Most drivers say, I'll answer whatever you want, I've got nothing to hide. Then they create the exact record used against them. Good way. Smart drivers say, I choose to remain silent. Then they deny the officer free evidence from their own mouth. Former police officers have confirmed this works because it removes the easiest source of roadside evidence, which is you. And if you are thinking, but won't they get mad? Maybe. Some will not like it. That does not matter. Your goal is not to be the most liked person on the shoulder of the highway. Your goal is to protect yourself without being hostile. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection once the questions stop being basic and start sounding investigative. There is another reason this tactic is powerful. Silence keeps your story intact for later when your head is clear, the pressure is gone, and you have advice that matters more than people realize. A clean silence today can protect you months later in court. A messy roadside explanation can haunt you the entire case. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it shows you clearly invoked your right instead of just mumbling or freezing. Most viewers already clicked away. If you're still here, you're serious about protecting your rights. Prove it by hitting like, because the next part ties all of this together and makes the whole system make sense. The fourth tactic is the emergency brake for the moment things get worse. Here's exactly what you say. I want a lawyer, word for word. If you want to make it even clearer, say, I will not answer questions without a lawyer. Keep it short, keep it direct. Once the stop starts turning into custody, serious questioning, or an arrest, this line becomes a shield. This is 100% legal. You are not admitting guilt by asking for a lawyer. You are protecting yourself from pressure, confusion, and mistakes. A lot of people think asking for a lawyer makes them look guilty. No, it makes you look smart. If the consequences are serious, you should stop trying to handle it alone in the worst place possible, which is the side of the road or the back of a patrol car. Bad way. Most drivers say, I can explain everything right now. Then they talk for 30 minutes and bury themselves. Good way. Smart drivers say, I want a lawyer. Then the pressure to keep talking loses a lot of its power. This line matters because once you are in real trouble, your best move is not a better explanation. Your best move is to stop digging. People believe there is one perfect sentence that fixes everything. Usually there isn't, but there is a perfect sentence that stops things from getting worse. That sentence is the lawyer request. Use it if the stop has clearly crossed into serious territory. Not as a joke, not as a threat, just as a firm choice. And let me be clear, these 4 tactics are not tricks for disrespecting police. They are tools for keeping the process honest. Ask whether you are free to leave, refuse consent to searches, remain silent when questioning turns investigative. Ask for a lawyer if the situation turns serious. That sequence is simple enough to remember even when your hands are shaking. Now let's connect this to the law without turning this into a boring class. Terry v. Ohio basically says police can briefly detain you if they have specific reasons to suspect crime. In 7th grade English, that means they need more than a vibe, but less than courtroom proof. That is why your question, am I being detained or am I free to leave, matters so much. It forces the issue. Rodriguez v. United States says a traffic stop cannot be stretched longer than needed just to chase unrelated suspicion without more legal cause. In plain English, a broken taillight stop is supposed to be about the taillight, not an endless roadside interview. That connects directly to your timing and your first tactic. Schneckloth v. Bustamonte says consent can make a search lawful. Plain English again, if you say yes, you may hand police the permission they needed all along. That is why I do not consent to any searches is so powerful. You are making them stand on actual legal grounds, not your nervous cooperation. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings, and that is why these lines matter in the real world, not just online. Now let me show you exactly how this plays out in a real stop. You're driving home at night, lights flash behind you, you pull over safely. The officer says you rolled through a stop sign. So far, normal. The wrong way starts right here. You hand over your documents, then you start talking. You say you were coming from a friend's place. Then you say maybe it was your cousin's place. The officer notices your hands shaking. You laugh nervously and say you hate cops because you got searched once before. The officer goes back to the car, returns, hands you a warning, but then asks where you're really heading. You stay. You answer. Then comes the big one. You don't mind if I take a quick look in the car, right? You say, sure, I've got nothing to hide. Now the search is on. During the search, the officer finds a pill bottle that is not yours, a friend's knife under the seat, and old cash in a backpack. Suddenly, your simple warning is now a nightmare. Now the right way. Same stop, same officer, same warning. You stay calm. You give the required documents. You do not narrate your night. The officer asks extra questions after the warning is done. You ask, am I being detained or am I free to leave? If the officer says you're free to go, you leave. Done. If the officer says you are detained, then the pressure starts, but so do your protections. The officer asks to search. You say, officer, I do not consent to any searches. Then you stop talking. The officer asks where you were, who owns the bag, why you seem nervous. You say, I choose to remain silent. If the stop keeps escalating toward arrest or serious questioning, you say, I want a lawyer. Watch what happens. Now, every next step requires the officer to rely on law, not your loose words. That does not guarantee a perfect ending, but it can be the difference between a clean record and a messy one. And that difference starts with discipline, not drama. Next week, I'm breaking down what to say when an officer claims they smell weed coming from your car. Subscribe right now because that excuse gets used constantly, and if you miss that video, you could miss the most important search tactic of all. So remember the 4 moves? First, ask, am I being detained or am I free to leave? Because clarity changes everything. Second, say, I do not consent to any searches, because consent is the shortcut you never want to give away. Third, say, I choose to remain silent, because your own words can become the case against you. Fourth, if things turn serious, say, I want a lawyer, because that is how you stop the damage from spreading. You do not need a speech. You need calm, simple lines you can actually remember. Hit subscribe so you catch that next video on the weed smell claim. Smash like if this script just gave you words you'll actually remember under pressure. And drop a comment telling me which line shocked you most and which one you'll use first. Stay safe out there.